Welcome to the problem with grief and how to help, introducing the hope model of healing. Today, we are going to talk about four main areas where people get stuck during their grief. Okay, so these are problems outside of grief itself. It's how is grief affecting people's life? So that's what we're going to explore today. If we haven't met before, I'm Julie Clough. I'm a wife, a mom, a grandma. I'm a certified grief and life coach and the founder of Build a Life After Loss and the Hope Grief Coach certification. And you can find that at buildalifeafterloss.com. You can see some of my other things at julieclough.com. All right, let's move directly into the four areas of life greatly affected by grief. And I'm curious, for those who are joining me live, it would be interesting for you to put in the chat anything that comes to mind when you think about areas of life that are greatly affected by our experience of grief. You can put that in the chat, or you can make a list on your piece of paper. But I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are on this. And there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just to take a look at, what was your experience? Because in fact, raise your hand if you have experienced grief, because people typically, oh yeah, everyone's hands going up. So typically people don't come to these types of presentations if they haven't had their own grief experience. And I already have two people talking about relationships, and that is definitely one of them. All right. The first one I want to talk about today is confidence. Confidence. And somebody put in the chat motivation. And confidence is a big aspect of motivation. If we don't have confidence in the direction that we're going, we are not motivated. And grief, loss itself, creates a shattering of our foundation, of the foundation of what we think should be happening, of what we have built our life on. We have built our life on. Everyone builds their life on certain beliefs. And some of those beliefs are given to us as children. Some of those beliefs a lot of them are given to us as children, this conditioning that we experience as children. And that's not necessarily a negative, I will say. And then we have other things that happen in our life, and we build a construct, we build a foundation. And when loss happens, it threatens that foundation. In many cases, in my case, losing my brother to suicide was a big foundation breaking moment. Going through a divorce was a big foundation breaking moment. But losing my children in a car accident, and I was the driver of the car, completely shattered my foundation. All of these events affected the foundation of who I thought I was and shattered my confidence in the process. So, just a little bit of a background of why confidence is so affected. In fact, raise your hand if you felt your confidence affected in your grief. The second thing, and already brought up by a couple of people, big time, somebody says big time confidence was affected. Absolutely. And this has been my experience as I've worked with people, is that in every case, their confidence was affected. Another area that's greatly affected by grief is relationships. And there are so many reasons why relationships are affected when a person is grieving. A big one is the foundation has been dropped out for people. Their foundation has been shattered. They are not the same person, and they're not the same person that created that relationship. Also, it's challenging to continue to have positive experiences in relationships if overall your personal experience, a person's personal experience, is negative. So it's very challenging to have positive experiences in a relationship when we're grieving. It's not impossible, but it's less common, less likely to happen on a regular basis. And this greatly affects a relationship. Another thing in grief that greatly affects a relationship is that the level of so we all have a certain level of tolerance for other people. Okay. Um, in fact, my husband just introduced me to this show where this man is grieving. It's a kind of a comedy sitcom, but where this man is grieving and his tolerance for people chewing, like he doesn't have tolerance to listen to people chew. And that's such a minor little thing, but if we look at that and all of a sudden our tolerance for other people and their individual preferences, when somebody is grieving, their tolerance is greatly reduced. They go from a tolerance of this and I can accept you where you are and to a tolerance of almost nothing sometimes. And that obviously will affect a relationship. Okay, purpose in life. Now, this is something interesting that sometimes we don't even think about, but I have, um, I have gone through a assessment. Let's call it an assessment with a ton of people talking about these four areas. And when I ask people what their connection is to their purpose in life, and these are people who are grieving, they will rate themselves below a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, 10 being they have great purpose in life, and 1 being they feel no purpose in life. And most people in all four of these areas who are grieving will rate themselves below a 5 in these four areas. Now, relationships is a little tricky, but because we have different relationships with different people, so we might not rate all of our relationships below a 5, but kind of that overall experience of a relationship. But purpose is tremendously affected. Again, if we think about the foundation crumbling, if we're not standing on a foundation, even the things that gave our life purpose before our loss are greatly affected by loss and grief. So, purpose is definitely an area that is hit when a person is grieving. Okay. Now, what is the fourth area? The fourth area is health. And why is health affected when we're grieving? There's definitely a physical aspect to our grief. In fact, um, most people in the field will understand that grief affects our lungs, that grief kind of originates from our lungs. And that makes a lot of sense. We're not going to go into why that is. I'm not going to go into that rabbit hole right now. But another thing that affects health during grief is our lack of ability to take care of ourselves, the lack of desire for self-care. In fact, raise your hand if you felt a lack of desire. There's a mechanical hand. I don't know because I can't see you on the screen, but there's a mechanical hand at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Raise your hand if you felt like your health was affected by your grief. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, it's not awesome that it's affected by your grief, but I'm glad that you're connecting to this. I'm glad that you're connecting to the issues that are prevalent in grief. I'm glad that you're understanding and that in reflection on your own grief experience, or perhaps you're in a grief experience at this moment. All these four areas greatly affect us when we're grieving. And these are, would you not agree that these are major components of life? Major components of our life, our confidence, our relationships, our connection to purpose, and our health. I'm going to step back just a minute and talk about purpose again, because I think sometimes we think of like this big purpose in life. Our purpose in life can be, you know, caring for our children. Our purpose in life, at any given moment, we can connect to purpose in volunteer work that we're doing in that moment, or family relationships, or there's a lot of different aspects to purpose. But all four of these areas are major components to living a happy and fulfilled life. And that is why grief healing is so important. And I just want to mention briefly also that loss and grief sometimes are loss, grief, and love, sometimes are combined. In that if we've lost something that we've loved, then our grief becomes connected to the love. And when grief comes as a result of loss, we connect grief to loss. But these are three different things. So it is possible to move through the grief, remove the grief experience to a certain extent. I'm not saying that we won't occasionally experience sadness, but the way I define grief is this unrelenting pain that just will not move out of the way. Okay. When we are not experiencing that day after day, week after week, then we have moved through the grief enough to reconnect, to rebuild that foundation, to reconnect to our confidence, to our relationships, to our purpose in life, and to our self-care. We do have a grief certification that is starting soon, and I want to share with you what some of our coaches who have gone through this certification have said about it. This is Laura, and I'm not going to read everything that she said here, but I'm just going to share this one paragraph. After losing her son unexpectedly in 2016, she then began coaching. She says, as I was searching for a way to help other mothers heal from child loss, I found Julie and began listening to her practical advice. And when she opened up her grief course, I knew I had to be a part of it. And I sure appreciate that Laura was a part of our grief certification, and she is a Hope Grief certified coach in our coach directory. Now, this is what happens is that when a person is grieving, there's a certain part of them, maybe a little tiny part, and in the beginning days of grief, there's definitely levels of grief, but in the beginning days of grief, when it's all consuming, it's hard to connect to that part of us that has hope for healing. But there is this spark of hope of healing in every person. There truly is. There truly is a spark of hope for healing in every person, because healing is our birthright. It is part of our DNA. We see this when we scratch our finger and our finger heals. Our finger heals because it's part of our DNA to heal. So every person in some level wants to move from grief to a level of healing. We're not going to define healing today, but we're going to talk about just a level of healing, a level of feeling better again, recreating that foundation in their life. But there's not a pathway. They find no pathway between grief and healing. So they wake up one day and they say, I'm going to rebuild my life. I can't go on like this. I've got to move forward. I've got to show up in my life. I've got to be more connected. And so they kind of force themselves into healing or pretending that they're healed, but then they get brought right back into grief. And this happens over and over and over again. And maybe you had this experience too, until finally they kind of give up and they go, I guess grief is my experience for the rest of my life. There, with no path forward, a person is left with no way to get from where they are to where they want to be. And they find themselves in this pit of, we'll call it despair, this pit of so many questions, searching in at 100 different directions for some relief from their pain and not finding the path. With what someone needs who's grieving and desires is hope and a path forward. And part of hope is knowing that there is a path forward. The hope model of healing offers a pathway to healing and leads to transformation. It's all about honoring the grief. It's opening up to understanding. It's preparing through discovery and embracing resolution and rebuilding. And this is what it looks like. We have these 5 foundations of growth, and within each one of these foundations of growth are very specific lessons and activities and very specific things that need to be understood, practiced, and implemented. And when someone walks through these 5 states, it offers them a structure and they find a pathway to rebuilding. Instead of hopping that chasm between coping and just getting by and rebuilding their life, waking up one morning going, I got to rebuild, I got to rebuild, I got to be doing better. Instead of like in this pretend state of rebuilding, they're actually walking through these processes, and then when they walk through the process of understanding their coping and implementing coping practices that are healthy and helpful, and going through the process of understanding and discovering and resolving, rebuilding happens naturally because they have built a foundation through the steps of coping, understanding, discovering, and resolving. The hope model of healing and the 5 foundations of growth create more certainty in healing. I want to introduce you to another of our Hope certified grief coaches. This is Pamela. She said Julie Clough is a thought leader when it comes to the healing process for people in grief. She has developed a clear path for people to claim freedom from a lifelong attachment to loss. I love the words that she uses here. Don't we all want to claim freedom from a lifelong attachment to loss? So you might be wondering, is grief coaching correct for you? I want you to consider the challenges you have faced, the lessons you have learned, and why you're here today. Because those are the answers. Those are actually the answers to whether or not grief coaching is correct for you. As Joanne Walmsley said, our hard-won lessons are also valuable in our roles as helpers. And I started to say healers. And in some way, just like anybody, like a person, healing comes from within. But when we go to a doctor because we have a broken leg, we're not looking for the doctor to heal our leg. We're looking for the doctor to provide an atmosphere for healing. And that's what a grief coach does. Grief coaching is not for you if you don't like people. Okay, that's kind of a given. If you don't want to help or you have no interest in learning something new. But I think all of you here today, just your presence here, says that, it's likely that those, maybe not positive, but it is likely that all three of those prerequisites apply. And those are a desire to help others, compassion, and willingness to learn. This is Julie Hawks. She was already working as a coach for a long time, had a very thriving practice, and she went through the Hope Grief Coach certification. And she said, going through the grief training was a profound experience for me. I love that now I have tools to empower my clients to make step-by-step progress and find joy again. She found that a lot of her clients were dealing with grief and it wasn't being addressed, that the other things were being addressed, but the grief itself wasn't being addressed. She said, I will forever be grateful for the things I have learned from this program, and I can't wait to share it with others so they can grow and heal too. So, what does it take to become a certified Hope Grief Coach? The goal in our certification program is for you to become comfortable, confident, and effective in supporting a client in their grief and assisting them in life-changing incremental healing steps and shifts. This is another one of our coaches. She actually is a coach training specialist here at Build a Life After Loss. She started out as a client and she built her own, then she went through the certification process, built her own business, and is now one of our coach training specialists. And she does some of our coach training. She does a lot of her coach training. She's amazing. But she said, Julie had been my grief coach for many months. The experience changed my life. When I heard about her grief coach training, it was a no-brainer. I couldn't believe how much value Julie gave us at each training. So now I get to guide and coach people through the system Julie built, the same one that changed my life. So awesome. Okay, you can make a difference. And our next training, this is, we're in March of 2025. At the time of this recording, our next training begins Monday, May 12th at 7 p.m. Central Time. And for all the details and to get registered, you can go to this link, which is bit.ly/gethopecertified. And when you go to that link, you will go to a calendar for a 15-minute discovery call where you will meet with Sandy, who I just introduced to you, and she will share questions, or she will share answers to your questions and help you with the process of understanding whether this is correct for you. And the link to this link has been added to the chat so that you can go directly there. There are limited appointments available right now, so I encourage you to go to that link right now. Let's talk about the investment. The investment in this program where you become trained to help other people as a grief coach. And you can use this in your current practice. You can use this learning to create a coach, a grief coach practice. You can use this as a grief specialist, a grief group leader. You can use this in a lot of different ways, but this is an investment. And similar programs I have seen have been $5,000 to $10,000 and above. And our program is not that. The regular tuition is $3,900. And one of the reasons I'm excited to share this with you today is that currently we have an early bird special for only $2,900. That's a savings of $1,000. And there's payment plans available. Yes, our price is going up, but We are making it doable for you to get in right now at a savings of $1,000, just like everything else. It 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 is a huge investment on our end to bring this program to you, and we are thrilled to be able to share with you a $1,000 um, discount or special on this program. So, what do you get? You gain confidence to help others, confidence to build or expand your business, specific coaching skills, specifically in grief, rebuilding relationships, confidence, and purpose. These are the things that we talked about are so affected by grief. Ability to be an effective grief coach, access to a program that works. I have used it with so many clients with with steady results, with results that are predictable, and you will gain personal healing yourself. How it works is we have a comprehensive training in that hope model of healing that I introduced you to, those 5 foundations of grief. You will learn of growth, sorry, 5 foundations of growth. You will learn about each one in detail. There are 9 modules of videos, over 45 videos in these training modules, 9 weekly online hour to hour and a half interactive Q&A calls where we go into your questions about the program, how to use this program, your specific questions about coaching a client, or about concepts that are introduced, as well as specific activities that help you to understand what your client experiences in the program. Training in specific coaching skills, training in the 3 levels of coaching, instructions on how to use the program, 120 plus page Build a Life After Loss client workbook. You will work through that book yourself, and this will be the workbook that you will be certified to use with your clients after completing the program. You can make a difference. And the next training begins Monday, May 12th. I encourage you to book your call now. It's a 15-minute call. Sandy will answer your questions, help you determine if this is correct for you, give you information that will help you determine if this is the right step for you at this time. You can see how valuable this is to be able to give people back the foundation that they lost in loss and grief. This is the foundation that I lost when I lost my brother, when I lost my first marriage, when I lost my kids in a car accident. A foundation that was crushed and crumbled. And rebuilding that foundation has made all the difference in my life. And I have watched rebuilding that foundation make a huge difference in other people's lives. I'm going to hang on for just a moment to answer any questions that you may have, but I hope you will consider joining us on May 12th for our next certification program. Thank you for being here.